Pretty loud. Anyway, okay, so we, on the second or whatever day it was, we had, our regular business meeting, so we had a shortened amount of time. So I got to the first thing that's on your paper, what was 144,000 of the Jehovah's Witnesses. So we talked in chapter 7 about the 144,000, and I had a short time because it seems like everybody's got a view on the 144,000, and I said that probably more people know about the 144,000 because of the beliefs of the Jehovah's Witnesses than they do if they even know that Christians believe that, although we have a different view than they do. And so we went through that, and if you need to, the recording's on YouTube, and you can refresh what we had. Carl, are you up to reading? Can you read? Okay, so I want to get into that second thing, the list of the 12 tribes. And that's why I made the map, because even though the 12 tribes are not the same as the 12 tribes, this is the original 12 tribes, okay? This is kind of like, one of those tribute bands to some famous group, not all the players are the same. No, but there's a reason for it. But I wanted you to be able to see, and this map, I don't know about this exact one, but this map here, if you guys can see, is probably in the back of all your Bibles also, like that. But if you, because here's the thing, who are these 144,000? This is important. So if you would read in chapter 7, 5 through 8, yeah. Do your microphone.
From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. From the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000.
Okay. So, and if you look at your map, you'll see that the ones that are different is that Dan isn't listed, and Ephraim. So Dan is the pink one here, and Ephraim is the aqua colored one right above it where it says Ephraim. They aren't listed. Okay. And so in the replacement is that one of them was Joseph that replaced him. I don't know why I can't see it on my note here. It was Joseph and
Was it
Levi.
Manasseh?
No, Levi. Joseph and Levi replaced Dan and Ephraim. And I bring up this point because I think that this is important, that this listing is a symbolic listing of God's church. It's not Jewish tribes from the Old Testament. Otherwise, you would have all of these people that would be there. Now, the thing is that Joseph didn't have a tribe. His two sons had a tribe, Ephraim and who? Manasseh, had the tribe. So Joseph actually got like two tribes, where everybody else got. And Levi, where was Levi's tribe? They didn't have one because they were the priesthood over. So I think that this listing in chapter 7 is symbolic. It's talking about the church. Now, other people think that, no, this is going to be a literal regathering of the tribes, but they're not even in the, who's the first tribe listed in the reading?
Reuben.
Huh?
Reuben.
Reuben is. And Reuben's not the first one that's listed in the Old Testament as, I think Judah is. Judah's the oldest brother. Pardon?
The NIV had Judah.
Yeah, for which one? In,
Oh, yeah. it's not mine.
huh? Okay, then it's the other way.
Judah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the listings are different. But anyway, so and just an interesting note, if you ever read in the Old Testament, when they're dividing up the land before they're going to go into into Canaan, like that, is it said that the people who didn't want to go into the land, they wanted to leave their stuff behind and then go and fight, were Reuben. This is on the this is the Jordan River here, and then this is the east side, which is would be the east bank. This side over here would be the west bank today. But anyway, it was Reuben, it was Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. You see Manasseh at the top there. But then if you look over on this side, you got the other half of so when it says Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, they're not in the land. They're on the east bank. But the other half of Manasseh, the other half of Manasseh is. So then when you try to read and you try to figure out, well, why isn't Dan in there? I mean, go ahead, Joe.
Point being literal, in fact, all of them were exactly 12,000. That mean each of those tribes had neither death nor burden.
Well, even if
If it was literal, you would expect them to be a variance of numbers.
well, if it could be that the listing of the tribes is literal, but the representation is each of them has 12,000 that's represented for this group for whatever your reason. I think it's important. The 12 is the tribes, the sons of Jacob. There's 12 sons. You have 12 apostles. So 12 times 12 is 144. This is the way I read it. 10 is the number of completeness of God. And 10 times 10 times 10 is the Trinity, represents the Trinity. And that's how you end up with the 144,000. But you got to remember, if it's all symbolic, you don't get to quite figure it all out. You just see it there and go from there. So any questions? Clear as mud? How are we doing on this? Okay, so
I have a question.
yeah,
What do we do with the hair splitters?
us.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the are we the hair splitters?
No, I mean, they want to know. I mean, you
Oh,
tell
well.
them it's symbolic, but they can't register what that means in their mind.
Yeah, because when you say it's symbolic, they hear it as, oh, so you don't believe it's true.
Yeah.
And you go, no, I believe it's true, and that it means something, and whatever it meant is true. See, they run into the problem when we get to chapter 14, the 144,000 comes up again, and that and it talks about them, being the faithful virgins and that, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Are you saying that there's going to be? They say there's a remnant of Israel that are left on earth to evangelize the world. And you go, well, wait a minute. Are you saying that there's going to be a literal 144,000 virgin Billy Grahams running around, the countryside? And a lot of them would say, yeah. Again, I said this probably in week 1, 1,000 years ago when we started Revelation, is to me, it's after chapter 1, verse 10, to me, it's all symbolic language. It's true. It means something. And if you look into Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Daniel, you find all of the keys, What was it? A couple of weeks ago, we talked about where it said that he sealed at the beginning of chapter 7. And it says that he stopped the angels from the four winds of the earth and all that, and said, don't touch the land or the vegetation or the people until I seal my people. And what does that seal mean? And then we went back to Ezekiel, and it talked about when they stopped something in battle to seal the people. I forget where the other reference we went to. It's Old Testament typology that is brought into, into the book of Revelation. Like that. So if you want to get more exact, you have to go find it in the Old Testament prophecies. So anyway, the idea about I tried to look into Dan. Dan's one of those ones everybody's got an opinion of why Dan isn't in the list. Like, what did Dan do so bad, that they did? Best I come up with is that there was some form of idolatry going on with them. And it had to be a special kind of idolatry because everybody in Israel was into idolatry, so it had to be something special, but I didn't spend enough, time on it. So
My commentary says that the Antichrist was supposed to be coming from the tribe of Dan.
and I don't know where they get that. Just so we all remember, I probably mentioned this early on too, there is no Antichrist mentioned in the Bible. So, that usually surprises people, but the only time the word Antichrist is used is in, I think, 1 John, where he talks about the people who have caused the trouble, denied Christ, and he says they are Antichrist. They're in the spirit of Antichrist. That just means that you're doing things to harm the church, but there is no thing that says, this is the Antichrist. In Revelation 13, when we get to it, it'll talk about the beast, but the beast isn't the Antichrist. The beast supposedly works for the Antichrist if you put it in there. Thessalonians, you have the man of sin. There is no Antichrist that's mentioned, in the scripture. Like I say, it's only mentioned 3 times. They're all in First John. He's talking about individuals that are causing trouble in the churches. Not they're going to do the world domination and all that it has. Yeah. So anyway, that's another thing, is to try to figure out where the Antichrist is going to come from. And not physically come from, not like he's coming from Nebraska or something, but anybody here from Nebraska that I'm offending? Or no, but is he a Jewish leader? Is he a representative of the Roman Empire? Is he from a Muslim country? I mean, everybody's got all kinds of things and all that. So Carl.
I think the answer to your question is yes. To all of those things.
Yeah.
Because I believe the Antichrist to be symbolic for everybody that fights against the will of Christ.
Well, and I think we've talked about this early on, is I'm sure I have played the role of Antichrist in the past in denying Christ or, doing whatever. I think we've all probably at some point in time, if you go with that spirit of Antichrist, have probably played that role, even if it was only for our 15 minutes of fame. You don't know. Anybody online have anything they want to interject? Anybody else want to own up to have played the role of Antichrist like I just did?
How when you have no faith?
What?
How about when you have no faith? You've not known the church or Christ.
Well,
Is that Antichrist?
yeah, I think Antichrist is more where you're speaking against the things that are true, not speaking against the things that you don't know. Yeah, I don't want to make it like, all the people in there are the Antichrist because they're not in my Bible study here. Although they're close. No. Like I think it's specific, like that, but.
Hey,
So.
Gene.
Oh, who said, oh, yeah, Troy.
So, you were talking about Dan. I've been to Israel, and I've been to the far north where it says on your map Dan up in Naphtali. The tribe moved to the north. That's one part of the story. Another part of the story is that they set up a competing temple in the north, and were one of the 2 temples in the northern kingdom. So they have some baggage, if you will,
There's definitely a reason, there's definitely a reason. I mean, and what you're talking about was when the sons of Solomon, you know, one of them, I don't remember if Jeroboam, Rehoboam, I get those two mixed up. But you know, set up the tribes in the north and set up worship centers, you know, up in the hills with the
At the foot of Mount Hermon, in the place called Dan, there is an archaeological site that reconstructs the actual temple with an altar, not the correct specifications, and that's where they set up this alternative worship other than where it should have been in Jerusalem.
right.
So that was one of the things. The other part is at the end of the book of Judges, Dan left, basically, they left their land that was given to them and moved to what they thought was really good land, but unfortunately, it was really close to the Assyrians later on, who came through.
Came and took them away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you need to remember from this too, is that the Assyrians came down in 722 BC and they took the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom. You know, they left Benjamin and Judah. Yeah, Judah and Benjamin, and took the other ones away, never to have returned. You know, that's why they're called the lost tribes. Nobody knows who they are, where they are. You know, there's different groups that have tried to claim to be them. You know, does anybody remember, oh, this is going back a ways, Herbert W. Armstrong? He used to be on TV all the time in the 50s and 60s, you know, and he was the Worldwide Church of God. His son took over, Garner Ted Armstrong was after that. Anyway, they were into this thing called British Israelism. Okay. And that was that the 10 tribes ended up in Britain or Northern Europe, or probably Britain, since they got that British Israelism in there, and that they were the 10 tribes. And so Herbert W. Armstrong, he associated himself with that, you know, and that was his, you know, pitch when he was preaching on, you know, on TV, you know, like that. So, but nobody knows. I mean, how would you know? That's the problem. That's the problem in Israel right now, is how do you establish, like, if, you know, if you were going to rebuild the temple like they want to do, which they won't do like that. I mean, God won't, I don't think God will allow it, but, and the Muslim sure as heck won't. But the thing is how do you establish your family lineage? Who's from the tribe of Levi to be the priesthood, you know? And I mean, if it were to happen, which I don't think it will, but if it were to happen, it would have to be a God thing, that God would somehow be able to let those people identify, you know, who they are, you know. Supposedly the Kohan are the tribe of Levi. So if you run into people with the name of Kohan or Cohen, you know, supposedly that name came down, and that's the way. Anyway, look, I wanted to get into this thing about the full armor of God. Oh, I'm sorry, Denny. Denny had something. Do your microphone. I'm sorry, we're talking a little bit louder. Well, they would be made up of they could be made up of all the tribes. See, we don't know where the tribes ended up, but you got to remember. So when they were out of the land for 1948 years minus 40, 1908 years. I'm taking off those 40 years before the temple was destroyed. Anyway, for 1900 years, when they were out of the land, okay, and when they scattered, they lost identity. Well, those people didn't lose identity, who they were. And maybe their kids knew who their identity was. I don't know. How far back do you go in your lineage before you lose track of who your who your people are. I lose track with my grandfather, because my grandfather was the only one who came over from Russia in 1917. That's the whole, my aunt and uncle were from Russia, and my dad was the only one born here, but we have no idea who his family was. Somebody had a recollection that his brother had gone to South America. Nobody knows. So I lose track really quick, what my lineage is. Some people, I don't know, they say they go back to the Mayflower, I don't know. So anyway, so at some point in time, let's say 200 years BC, you got families. How many generations is that? 5, 6, 7 generations down the line, they don't know who their great grandparents, were. And I doubt they kept records if they're on the run and they're traveling all the time. So they don't know. So wait, I'm going to go back to Denny's. So Denny, so when people came from, from Russia, from Eastern Europe, wherever they came from and settled, say in that period, say in 1948 to 1960, when they're doing their initial, regathering, they could have been from any tribe, so, and they don't know. And the records, the genealogical records used to be kept in the temple, and the temple's gone, and you don't know. Andy, do your microphone.
One summer, my mother and her cousin decided they're gonna do the genealogical trail in New England, where our family came from, on my mother's side. And the way that they tracked it back, through all those years, back to the late 1700s, was through church records. And that was the only place they were.
Yep.
Most of the towns in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts had big forest fires and destroyed the record.
Right.
So they went between the churches, information, and the graveyards, which is where the cemeteries were on the older churches.
Yeah.
So it tracks back through religion to the start of our country.
Yeah. But even that's only
300
300 years, 400 years that you go back. So that would be from, say that they scattered in 70 AD, you go 400 years, that's 470 AD. And that's if you're tracking, and after that, people don't care. They don't want to, they don't want to track. So, well, anyway, yeah, it's Troy, you ought to set up a trip to Israel, and we'll have a Masters Men trip to Israel, and you could be the tour guide. Were you supposed to go this year and had to cancel?
Yeah, I was supposed to go in about 2 weeks.
Oh.
50 people, but that got scrapped.
Yeah, because people are shooting at each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got to make a
Gene, I
Masters.
did meet, hey, Gene.
Yeah.
One of my trips to Israel, I met a Christian church planter in Cana, in the just north of Nazareth. And I asked him when he came to Christ, and he said, "Well, I've always been in the church my whole life, and my parents." Now this is an Arab. He said, "My parents were Christians also." I said, "Really?" I thought that was really strange, and he said, "Yes. As a matter of fact, we trace our family line all the way back to the time of Christ. We've always been in this land."
Yeah. And those people back there, especially, the Coptics, the Coptics, they're Egyptian, I think, but they were always right there. They're from the Eastern Church, and
They never scattered.
Pardon?
Yeah, they never scattered.
Yeah, they never scattered. They're there, and so so a lot of these groups are right there by the source, and somehow the records were kept, or and again, it depends how faithful you are on the oral tradition of your family. Old Al, what was his last name? I forgot now. Yeah, he was almost 100 and he died a couple of years.
One or two out.
Huh? Orchard, yeah. Well, I was picking up books from Jerry's to help him move out. And I'm setting books out, and then when I went back there, I go, oh, you know, this book here, I go, I thought that was Alb Orchard. He goes, it is. You know, I go, what do you mean? And it was a book that he wrote, and I read it. Yeah, he wrote it for his kids because he was always telling his war stories. I guess he was somewhat of a hero. He was a, you know, shot down behind enemy lines in prison camp, Purple Heart, and, you know, not quite Audie Murphy, but, you know, on that line. And so they said, why don't you write this down? And so he wrote it down, you know, and it's in a book. And, you know, people used to do that, not to publish a book. He had it published here in town, but people used to keep that oral tradition going from generation to generation. And, you know, I was telling my wife after the Al Borchardt book, is I said, oh, we should have our mothers do that. But they can't remember what they had for lunch yesterday.
Family Bible, or they do.
Yeah, well, see, that is a thing. You know, they used to keep the records in the family Bible. Yeah, it used to be a thing that isn't a thing, you know, now. And you know, well, anyway, so yeah, so Dan and Ephraim, you know, at least in this Revelation story, are kicked out and they've been replaced, you know, by Joseph and Levi. And so remember now, this listing, we have to wrap it up pretty soon. This listing here was came right after the sealing of the 144,000. I saw standing there 144,000, blah, blah, blah. And you know, and I heard the voice that said, you know, stop the winds and stop the destruction until I can seal my people. He seals his people, and these are the ones that he sealed, because we're going to find out, because he's sending them out as the church. They're the church militant. They're the us that are still here, that are still fighting the fight for Christ. And then when we get into what's those next verses, 9 through 17, he's going to see that multitude of people that can't be numbered. And that's the church triumphant. Those are all those who have gone before us. Dave Jensen, 2 weeks ago, was in the church militant. Today he's in the church triumphant. Okay, he's those, and those who are at the, you know, at the altar worshiping, you know, worshiping Christ there. But in that interim between the two groups, it's like he's sending them out to fight the battle of, you know, for Jesus. That's us. And next week we'll do it. That's why I wanted to get into the full armor of God. That's in Ephesians 6, where he talks about the full armor of God. And you wonder, well, why is Paul talking about the full armor of God? What does that mean? And I think we have a description here in Revelation, you know, a heavenly view of what God's intention is for the earthly church today. Yeah. And this is where, this is my last comment. This is where I take a difference with people that throw everything in Revelation off into the future. You know, it's going to be in the future. Yeah, when the Antichrist comes, and, you know, when all this stuff happens in the future, it leaves nothing for the church today. What is John saying to the church of his day and of our day, if it's all for some far off day? And so I think that what we're going to get at, and we'll get into that next week, we'll go through the full armor of God. Like I said, it's the end of chapter 6 in Ephesians, if you want to read, you know, through it, so you're more familiar, you know, so you're more familiar with it. Because now we've got the seal of God on us, and we've been prepared for, you know, again, the battle is symbolic. I mean, we're not taking up arms, you know, and stuff like that. It's a spiritual battle. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but, you know, against, you know, spiritual things. So we'll do that next week. We didn't get very far, as usual. Anyway, so anybody online have any questions? Look, they're all laughing at me online. Hey, you got a color drawing anyway. That should keep the interest going. Like that. Okay, anybody have a final word? Okay, Troy, set up a trip for us next year. We'll meet for a Friday at IHOP Jerusalem. You know? Hey, we'd be one heck of a group, wouldn't we, over there? Boy, they'd close their borders quick, wouldn't they? Okay, it's time for Deacon Dennis to take over the show. Ah. Mm.
Well, we'll hope to see you Sunday.
Okay, well, yeah, be there or be square.
Okay.
Okay, good.
He'll see you if you're there.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. What are we doing? Oh, okay. I'm gonna turn off the record. You guys can stay. I don't want to chase you away.